ready for brown grass. Hear what that means and how water restrictions kicking in December 1st next week could affect you. Your so-called wasteful or unnecessary water usage is now banned. And later, efforts to legalise weed in Florida are dragging. We'll ask why. Though
Berlin.
The Trump administration is designating Venezuela's Cartel de los Soles a foreign terrorist organization. It's imposing sanctions that it says includes Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. The U.S. accuses the group of illegally trafficking drugs into the United States. The Venezuelan government calls the designation, quote, ridiculous, and has continued to push back against the U.S. military's buildup in the Caribbean. President Trump spoke with China's President Xi Jinping in a phone call today, according to a White House source confirmed on background. The call was first reported by Chinese state media. According to Reuters, Xi told Trump in that phone call that Taiwan's return to mainland China is, quote, an important part of the post-war international order. Again, that's according to China's official news agency, Xinhua. More than 80 million people across the United States are expected to travel for the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. NPR's Joel Rose reports this year's travel forecast is projected to set another record.
AAA is projecting that nearly 82 million people will travel at least 50 miles from home between the Tuesday before Thanksgiving and the Monday after the holiday. That's 1.6 million more than last year's record total. AAA expects that the vast majority, about 73 million, will travel by car. About 6 million people are expected to fly, though AAA says that number could wind up slightly lower if some air travelers made other plans because of flight disruptions during the government shutdown. The Federal Aviation Administration says this is expected to be the busiest Thanksgiving travel season in 15 years, with a peak of more than 52,000 flights scheduled on Tuesday. Joel Rose, NPR News, Washington.
U.S. stocks trading higher this hour, with the Dow up nearly 200 points, or roughly 0.5%. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, a personalized program that bases rates on safe driving habits, at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7. I'm Craig Kopp. Tampa is giving $1.8 million to a family building affordable housing in Grant Park. The money's coming from the East Tampa Community Redevelopment Area. That's one of several districts in Tampa where money made from property taxes is returned to neighborhoods. The goal is to revitalize areas that need investment. Speaking to City Council, Pastor Deborah Camellis says she's glad the money is going to legacy owners in Grant Park over corporate developers.
They are people that have a heart. They're developers not with a money sign in their eyes, but they're there to make a difference in our community.
A mother and son business will build a 12-unit apartment complex on a vacant lot that they've owned for decades. The tax money requires those apartments stay affordable for at least 50 years. Florida roads are expected to see a record number of drivers during the Thanksgiving holiday. According to AAA, more than 4.6 million Floridians will travel over 50 miles for Thanksgiving. A vast majority of them will be driving, but record crowds also expected at airports. Mark Jenkins is a spokesman for AAA.
Thanksgiving really is the big show when we talk about travel holidays, with millions of people who are hitting the road and going to the airport all at the same time. And so people are gearing up.
The busiest days to travel will be tomorrow and Wednesday, along with next Sunday. Nationally, 4 of the top 5 Thanksgiving travel destinations this year are in Florida. You're going to be paying quite a bit more for gas if you're hitting the road for Thanksgiving. AAA says the average price of a gallon of regular unleaded gas is up 18 cents since last week. The price of $3.09 is also 15 cents higher than 1 month ago, but about 2 cents lower than you paid this time last year. Motorists across the greater Tampa Bay region are paying $3.14 on average. We're looking at a sunny day today. There is a 10% chance of rain with a high of 84 degrees. I'm Craig Kopp, WUSF 89.7 News.
Bringing the power of music to the concert hall, classroom, and your community with more than 100 concerts throughout Tampa Bay. From Beethoven to Broadway, discover Florida's largest orchestra at floridaorchestra.org.
I'm Megan Bowman with Your Florida. What's that? Well, I'm glad you asked. We share how state government impacts your daily life. Got a question? Let us know at wusf.org/yourflorida.
This is Florida Matters Live and Local. We're broadcasting from the Doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studios in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. If you love a lush green lawn, you know this sound is essential. Well, you're probably going to be hearing a fewer sprinklers doing their job for the next month or so. That's because the Tampa Bay region is in an official water shortage. Water restrictions from the Southwest Florida Management District kick in on December 1st, and any wasteful or unnecessary water use is banned. To explain what it means for people in the greater Tampa Bay region, here's the Water Management District's Regulation Division Director, Michelle Hopkins. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
So we're in Phase 1 water shortage. That sounds a little bit technical, but what exactly does it mean?
The Phase 1 water shortage is really an alert to our residents and local governments that we are seeing some trends in dry conditions, and we just want to put everyone on notice just to start preparing for being a little bit more careful about your water usage. And the local governments, it's a good opportunity for them to kind of check their compliance and enforcement of watering restrictions, and also for residents to take the time to check their systems, make sure that they're operating efficiently, checking for leaks and broken nozzles or other things. And it's just kind of an awareness. You know, we've had less rainfall historically for the last 12 months when you compare it to, you know, historic averages. So we're operating at a deficit right now that we're seeing about 13 inches of rainfall deficit.
Across the entire year?
Yes, over the last months, 12 months, looking at that average. But in particular, through our rainy season, other than May, you know, we did not get our usual rainfall amounts. Those rainfall amounts were less than normal. We didn't have tropical systems that brought some of that extra rain that they do, which, you know, in some sense was a blessing for us to have that break this year. But at the same time, it wasn't a source that was replenishing some of those supplies.
Okay, so one of the things in the notice that went out about the Phase 1 water shortage, and I should note too, this kicks in December 1st, but it notes that people should limit unnecessary water use. Now, that's a pretty broad term. So what does unnecessary water use actually mean?
Unnecessary water use means don't leave your hose running and lay it on the driveway while you're running over to the other side of the yard to fix something or plant something. It's just be mindful. Don't have the water running when you don't need to. Maybe using more efficient means of watering, or if you're hand watering, you know, you're not doing that necessarily every day. You might be doing that every other day. Just cutting back and being careful about those uses of water that aren't necessary.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like from what you're saying, most of this is focused on outdoor water use, like watering their garden or their lawn or potentially washing the car, that sort of thing. Is that where most of the kind of water use comes from, or where you're going to see the biggest difference when it comes to trying to make sure that we're conserving what we have in the Tampa Bay region?
I think that's where you're going to see the biggest difference and the most impact from being conservative and how you're using that water. And so there are some statistics that say that your outdoor water use represents 50% of your overall water use. So that's a big number. Sometimes you just, if you're putting some attention to something and putting some focus and intentional activities, that you're able to cut back.
You mentioned local governments in terms of people having to pay attention to what information they're getting from their local government about watering restrictions. Does the Southwest Florida Water Management District do much in the way of keeping an eye on how much water is being used, or do you basically have to rely on what the county and city governments are doing to keep tabs on how people are using water?
So we set forth the water shortage order, and even before the water shortage order, we have the year-round conservation measures, which establish 2-day-a-week watering for residents. And then the oversight and the responsibility of that, it does fall to the local governments. And some local governments have 1-day-a-week watering. So, I mean, you do need to know, where you live and if there are further restrictions on that. And so with the water shortage order, we do ask that the local governments start reporting to us on a monthly basis when they have enforcement issues with watering restrictions. If there are issues or matters that seem to need additional attention, then we'll certainly work with them and provide any assistance to address any enforcement matters that probably need both agencies' attention. But in general, that enforcement is left up to the local governments.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with the Southwest Florida Water Management District's Regulation Division Director, Michelle Hopkins, about the Phase 1 water shortage that the region is in. So, I mean, winter is typically the dry season for Tampa Bay anyway, right? And I know in 2024, we did have a lot of rain, and a lot of that was coming off the back of those hurricanes that we saw. Fortunately, as you mentioned before, the region didn't get hit with hurricanes this year. But the flip side of that is there's just kind of less water in the system right now. Is that kind of how it plays out?
Well, so looking back to 2024, we actually had dry conditions moving into that winter season as well. We had water shortage orders really throughout 2024, moving into October of 2024 before those storms. So we had dry conditions that we were monitoring. Same kind of concern. We moved into the dry season with a lack of rainfall. We also had some other infrastructure issues and some storage issues. Some of our storage levels were low. All of those conditions combined led to the 2024 water shortage orders. But as you noted, the tropical storms or systems that we had in the fall of 2024 generated a huge amount of water to the supply and really helped carry us through then that winter season. But since those storms, the rainfall that we've received has been much less than normal, other than, a couple pockets of heavy rain, but it's generally been, less than normal rainfall, which is how we find ourselves now that we're moving out of the wet season into the dry season. We have to evaluate, where our systems sit, and it's 13-inch deficit is a lot when you're looking at an average of 53 inches of rainfall a year.
So when you think about what you can do to alleviate some of this, does the Water Management District actually have a lot of flexibility? Because when I think of other places like Okeechobee in South Florida, for example, I know that when that lake fills up, they can kind of lower the dams and let some of the water out. Are there systems in the Southwest Florida Water Management District where you have that level of control, like dams that you can lower or raise to conserve some water and keep it, or sort of let it out into certain rivers and tributaries?
Yes, we do have water conservation structures that are set up just for that purpose. Hold the water back in preparation for those drier seasons. And then that gives us the ability to conserve as much of it as possible.
And so when you think about the dry season now, is there an element of fingers crossed? We hope we get a little bit of rain in the next few months to ease some things off and make sure that we aren't heading into like worsening dry conditions?
We always do hope for rain, rain dances and finger crossing always helps. We have 4 phases of water shortage orders. So let's say that the trends continue and we start to see more degradation in the water supply or just rainfall amounts, reservoir storage, all of those factors that we look at. Then we may recommend moving into the next level of water shortage order, which would be a phase 2. Phase 2 would look like 1 day a week watering. And there may be some other, activities that are prohibited, but, in general, what that means is moving to 1 day a week watering and maybe stricter hours of operation. We monitor this on a regular basis and just follow those trends and data points so that we can make an intelligent and fact-based decision on moving from one level to the next.
Okay, so it's potential that we could be in phase 2 at some point over the winter time as well. And I mean, as you pointed out before, some counties do have once a week watering restrictions. Is that just county discretion, or is that because those particular areas are naturally a little bit drier than elsewhere in the district?
It's county discretion. They may be doing it so that they're managing their available water supply, but it's different factors that would go into that, but it is county discretion, not necessarily because they're drier or wetter than another area.
And does the Southwest Florida Water Management District monitor things like wildfire risk, or are you just feeding that information to other agencies to take care of that? Because I imagine that would be a concern too when you look at the system globally.
We do monitor wildfire risk, but I don't know that would be a factor in declaring the next level water shortage, but it could. I mean, certainly if there were extreme dry conditions, that might be something that we would discuss. Generally, we're looking at lake levels and stream flow, rainfall that's been received, and aquifer levels, storage of water supply, the main factors that we would look at.
So for people listening to this, what would you want them to take away from this conversation?
Think about your water use. Be aware of where you may be able to cut back. I would recommend that they go to our website and look at our Water 101 information that we have for residents. It's a lot of great information, just recommendations for managing your irrigation system, Florida-friendly landscaping, and just other factors that really can benefit and help you in conserving water.
We've been speaking with the Southwest Florida Water Management District's Regulation Division Director, Michelle Hopkins. Michelle, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, later this hour, recreational marijuana could be back on the ballot next year. Supporters say it'll ease pressure on the court system and it could be a tax revenue bonanza. Opponents, including the state of Florida, say it's a risky move for public health and safety. Would you vote to legalize recreational marijuana for adults? Is it a smart move or a bad idea? Tell us. Email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org and you can join the conversation and call in. But first, West Tampa's black population is declining. We'll talk about why next on Florida Matters Live and Local. Stay with us.
Support for WUSF comes from listeners like you and from Seitenbacher with a new web shop. Healthy muesli, cold-pressed oils, and vegetable broth mix delivered to your door from right here in Tampa Bay. Details at Seitenbacher.com. Seitenbacher. Seitenbacher. Key Chorale and the Sarasota Ballet Studio Company joined forces for a holiday celebration of music and dance, showcasing the magic of the season. Sunday, November 30th at the Sarasota Opera House. Tickets are at keychorale.org.
I'm Alyssa Nadworny. At the COP30 Climate Summit in Brazil, Indigenous people participated in protests. Some even blocked the conference entrance after they were denied accreditation. One Indigenous activist shares their thoughts on what progress they were hoping for on climate issues and if their concerns were addressed. That's next time on Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. West Tampa's population is changing. By some estimates, the black population of West Tampa has declined by more than 50% in the last 3 decades. To talk about why people are moving and how the neighborhood is changing, we're joined by Joe Robinson, chair of the West Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency, and Elizabeth Strom, associate professor of public affairs at the University of South Florida, specializing in urban politics and policy and housing issues. Well, Joe, set the scene for us. So when we talk about West Tampa, what do we mean?
You know, you got Old West Tampa, and then you got West Tampa proper. I mean, West Tampa really goes all the way to the Bay, right?
Yeah.
So really, most people talk about the downtown part of West Tampa, which is the old part of West Tampa, which is really the Hillsborough River on the east, basically Columbus Drive on the north, probably Kennedy on the south, and Armenia, and you can even go to MacDill, but for the CRA area, it's Armenia on the west.
So, I mean, a 50% decline in the black population since 1990 sounds like quite a lot. What are you seeing?
Well, what I've seen slum and blight disappear. See, what you got to understand is that the original gentrification actually started with back in 1949 when they had the Urban Renewal Act in the scrub, when black folks was segregated. They were put in areas of Tampa, and they were kept there. So when urban renewal came, people started going and tearing up the slum areas and redeveloping it under the Urban Renewal Act. And there was a big argument about where black folks move. So the urban renewal has displaced black folks back then and segregated them and put them all in one spot, which they found out in Chicago, Trinity Green was not the way to do it. Nowadays it's mixed use. You don't want everybody poor in the same area. It doesn't work. It creates a lot of problems. And then the other thing is the interstate. I myself was impacted by the interstate in 1962. It came through and cut right through the heart of West Tampa, and then the crosstown cut right through over at Hyde Park. So a lot of the transportation changes in Tampa has created a loss of black folks in certain areas. In West Tampa, we had a large population of black folks in the North Boulevard homes, and another apartment complex that was down right across from where Blake High School is. So it's urban renewal, but then at the same time, there's supposed to be safeguards that, in other words, HUD requires a relocation assistance plan on every project that the Housing Authority does. I've been involved with every one of them, Belmont Heights, every relocation assistance plan, and it allows those people to come back. What you find is because of the long delay in rebuilding, which takes 5 to 10 years. It takes 5 years from the minute they say, okay, move everybody out. That takes a couple of years. Now it takes to get the first building back. It takes another 5 years. So by the time they come back, people relocate. They ain't coming back because they have students, they have children that go to other schools. They don't want to break them up, so they don't come back.
Elizabeth, let me bring you into this conversation. So we just heard the word gentrification that Joe was talking about. Well, what does that mean to you, and are you seeing it in other parts of Tampa too?
Well, gentrification, we tend to use that term anytime people are forced to move, and it's not always gentrification, right? I mean, there have been increasing housing costs across the region, and that's put pressure on people, moderate income and low income people. It isn't necessarily gentrification. I think West Tampa, a lot of it sort of started to hollow out, as Mr. Robinson said. It had to do a lot with the highways, and the area never really coming back from having it sort of bisected by what was then I-4. And then there are these forces that have pushed people toward the suburbs. And, so that's not always great for the neighborhoods left behind. The good news is that black families are moving to the suburbs as well as white families. So the loss of black population isn't entirely people involuntarily being relocated, but families becoming more affluent and realizing they could get a bigger house in a better school district and taking advantage of those opportunities. So I think, cities change. They're never static, and Tampa changes too. And some of those changes we might call gentrification, where wealthier people are moving in and making it unaffordable for lower income people. But we also have forces of suburbanization and jobs moving and people working from home and figuring out their working situation that way. So I think a lot of factors account for people moving around.
But when you have kind of a big demographic shift like the one that Joe's describing, I mean, it's that really changes the fabric of a city, right? So I wonder, I mean, are cities trying to address that in some way and say, look, we're losing something here if people are moving en masse?
Well, I think one thing that they're doing in West Tampa, which Mr. Robinson also alluded to, is that there's a ton of redevelopment going on now. Mm-hmm. And from what I see, and Mr. Robinson, you're the insider, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I've read, the Tampa Housing Authority is actually doing a very good job of making sure that half or perhaps more of the units built are affordable in some sense. Now, so it's not the same as public housing, which is deeply affordable. It's more of a range of affordability.
Yeah, what about that, Joe?
It's a mix. See, what the way now is mixed use. Mixed use means low income, middle income, and high income. They have low income housing that could be for like Section 8. You got middle housing, and they have market rate housing. Mm-hmm. And what they did is as you get closer to the river, it gets market rate. So those apartments that are on the and we also have townhouses that we're going to be bringing in because we have actually there's almost $1 billion development going there because you have West River which is about $500 million, and then you got Rome Yard that's breaking out the ground now. That's about another $500 million. And so they're having mixed use because we found with mixed use you don't have all the crime, you don't have all the grind. You have a sustainability neighborhood because we're going to bring in a cultural arts center. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a workforce center under Rome Yard development. So you've got to bring in the elements that's going to help the people come back and keep people there because the way you stop gentrification is you don't let them leave in the first place. So the other thing we're doing in the neighborhood, besides all this development, we're working on housing programs that help people stay in their homes. Yeah. That they don't get their homes coming in with these predators coming in trying to get a house at a couple of $100,000 because your mama, your grandmama died, and then they turn around and bill $600,000. She says it's not necessarily gentrification. It's just that it's a urban development going on.
I mean, I think you alluded to a little bit, Joe, kind of keeping people in situ.
I was involved with relocation assistance plan for the airport. Mm-hmm. All the Drew Park, 200 acres that was purchased, and Ora Colin was a relocation assistance firm that we work for, as I do consultant engineering. And what we did is under the Decent, Safe, and Sanitary Housing Requirement 49 CFR section that you have to first go find another place for the people, and you have to go and inspect it. And they have a checklist of the conditions, so it has to meet decent, safe, and sanitary conditions. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. A lot of times where most people went early on, they came out here with South Florida, what they call Suitcase City. Mm-hmm. This is the first place that they went. Why? Because it had cheap housing, cheap apartments. The second place that they're going now is out in Riverview. And if you notice the trend, the blacks are moving. First it was out here in Suitcase City. Then it's now out at Riverview. And it's all driven by the price of housing, the price of apartments, the location to a job. And the Housing Authority, by federal law, has to have a relocation assistance plan where they actually pay for you to move, they get your lights turned on, they get you started. As a matter of fact, people had businesses in these apartments like daycares. They have to actually relocate and pay those people for the business law.
We are actually out of time here, but I want to thank you both so much for sharing your insights. We've been speaking with Joe Robinson, Chair of the West Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you very much.
And Elizabeth Strom, Associate Professor of Public Affairs at the University of South Florida. Elizabeth, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Well, coming up next, we'll talk about the ongoing push to legalize recreational marijuana for adults. And we want to hear from you. Tell us if you'll vote for it and why, if there's an option on next year's ballot. You can email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. And call and join the conversation. The number is 813-755-6562. That's coming up next on Florida Matters Live and Local.
At WUSF, support comes from the people who listen, like you. Also, Sarasota Memorial Hospital celebrating 100 years of caring for the community and laying the foundation for 100 more, leading the region in quality health care since 1925. Learn more at smh.com/100. Tampa Bay Solar, designing, building, and installing renewable clean energy solar systems for residential and commercial customers across the state of Florida, with over 2,000 installations. Learn more at tampabaysolar.com.
On the next Fresh Air, actor Brendan Fraser tells us about his new film Rental Family. He plays a struggling American actor in Tokyo who works for a service that provides stand-in family members for rent. We'll also trace Fraser's remarkable resurgence from The Whale to Killers of the Flower Moon and beyond. Join us.
Great conversation on Fresh Air tonight at 7 on WUSF.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Most Florida voters think it should be legal for adults to use marijuana recreationally. Still, a constitutional amendment failed to get the votes needed last year. 56% of voters approved it, short of the 60% needed for constitutional amendments to pass. Supporters are trying again. They want to put the question back on the ballot, but there's a few hurdles to clear before voters could see it, including a court ruling that throws out some 200,000 signatures already collected for the new ballot initiative. Well, joining us to talk more about the push to legalize recreational marijuana in Florida and the pushback is Dara Kam, reporter with the News Service of Florida. Dara, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me back.
And Richard Blau, an attorney who oversees Gray Robinson's Regulated Products Division that concerns alcohol, cannabis, food, and tobacco products industries. Richard, thank you as well.
Happy to be here.
We want to hear from you as well. Would legalizing recreational marijuana allow pot to run rampant on the streets, or is it a smart move and good for business for Florida? Give us a call. Tell us what you think. 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. All right, so Dara, I want to start with you. How is this new proposed amendment different from what appeared and failed on the ballot last year, if there are actually changes to it?
There are a few changes. The changes that were included in this year's proposal, or I guess next year's proposal, but the current proposal, really try to target some of the critics' arguments, arguments that the governor and his allies made. So for an example, it specifically prohibits smoking in public places. That was something that the legislature could have regulated if they had wanted to, but that was not language that was included in last year's measure. It also does away with the vertical integration, the business model that's currently used, so it would allow for more businesses to enter the market. Doing different kinds of things. Now they have to do soup to nuts, the marijuana operators, the medical marijuana operators.
And that's been a kind of a point of contention, right? Because essentially you have to have a lot of resources just to get into the medical marijuana game here in Florida.
You do. It's a very expensive endeavor. It requires the legislature to adopt laws to regulate it and to implement it, which again is something that the legislature probably would have done anyway. And this one I find very interesting. It allows for home cultivation. So it would allow legislators to approve home cultivation, which again is something that the legislature could do and could have done under the old proposal. It specifically prohibits marketing and packaging of marijuana in a manner that's attractive to children. That language wasn't included in the last one.
Okay, so quite a few changes there. Richard, let me turn to you for a moment. So, one of the arguments that's put forward by recreational marijuana advocates, and so if this was to make it to the ballot, if voters were to approve it, it's a pretty high bar. 60% would have to approve it, but if that were to happen, Florida would be the 25th state, I think, to legalize it. And one argument for that is economics, right? They say there's kind of money to be made here, tax revenue that could be gathered. I mean, to your knowledge, has marijuana been a moneymaker for states where it's legal, like Colorado?
It's a valid point. There are numerous states that have adopted recreational marijuana and seen significant tax revenues generated as a result of that. Illinois, on the day that they approved recreational marijuana and it was available for purchase, the journalists have reported there were lines around the block, down the street. The lieutenant governor was in line to purchase marijuana. And the tax revenues just from the day were in the millions of dollars. Now, that's gross revenues, but still, what the states have shown where recreational marijuana was adopted is that there are significant revenues that can be generated. Of course, it's always a question, where do those revenues go? How will they be allocated? What will the government do with that money? And that's something that is really not formally addressed in the proposed constitutional amendment.
Right, and a ways to go before then. If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking about a proposed constitutional amendment to legalize recreational marijuana in Florida. It didn't pass last time. Would you vote for it if it gets on the ballot again next year? Give us a call, 813-755-6562. 6562 or email us, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Let's go to the phones. Jarrett is calling in. Jarrett, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Wanted to share that I'm happy to hear that citizens of Florida will have a chance to vote on the marijuana initiative again.
Well, they
So
may. We've got to get
Yeah.
there first, but yeah, there's a potential for it. Sure.
Yeah, I am worried, however, about continued interference from the state government. Looking at the Leon County grand jury investigating the Hope, Florida scandal, where $10 million of Medicare money or Medicaid money was diverted for political ads. I'm worried that the state government will try similar blocks in this time around.
Jarrett, thank you so much for your call. All right, so some concerns there. Dara, I mean, there was quite a lot of money poured into the amendment, both from the advocates, like more than $100 million on the pro side. The state of Florida poured a lot of money into fighting that proposed amendment last year. What's your sense of what kind of could go into it this time around?
Oh, it's going to be an expensive endeavor. Any kind of any proposed constitutional amendment is, well, any ballot initiative put on by the citizens, they're just very, very pricey. And the state legislature has put in a lot of new requirements that make the signature gathering and verifying process even more expensive. And so I think the estimate is that the cost has kind of quadrupled. It wouldn't surprise me if we spent over $100 million again this go around, if it makes it on the ballot. But I do think that we are, and I'm sure Richard can weigh in on this, I think we have a lot of hurdles to go before it's certain that this proposal makes it onto next year's ballot. And as you mentioned earlier, that a Leon circuit judge here in Leon County on Friday did say that he did side with the state and say that these 200,000 signatures could be scrapped. So they need about 880,000 signatures to get on the ballot, and they have to be from certain areas, certain congressional districts. They have right now over 600,000, according to the Secretary of State's website, that have been validated, but that ruling will invalidate roughly a third of those. And they have to be verified by February 1st. So there's a serious time crunch that they're facing right now to get on next year's ballot.
Yeah, pretty tight deadline there. Let's go to the phones again. We've got Adrian calling in. Adrian, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. The previous ballot or the previous proposal, didn't get passed, didn't get on there. I think a big thing, at least for me personally, was the whole vertical integration model. I think it really restricted the growth of the business and the industry, and just didn't get the product into the consumer's hands. It wasn't as it didn't promote as much of a capitalist market.
So you're looking forward, Adrian, to seeing a little more kind of opening up of the market, so to speak, without that vertical integration, if it kind of does make it past the does get approved, or does make it onto the ballot and gets approved by voters.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal, at least for a lot of people. Of course, consumers want the product, but I think if it was within that same model, it wouldn't have been as accessible. Or the other thing is the home grow. I think if there was really a concern of getting this product into people's hands and really caring about, people being able to utilize it for whether it was medicinal purposes or recreational purposes. I think having homegrown would have been a big change, or a big part of getting that passed.
Adrian, thank you so much for your call. Richard, what about that? I mean, that kind of homegrown notion, does that kind of make it a little more complicated to sort of administer? What are the legal implications of that?
Oh, homegrown is just one complication in a bundle of challenges that face this constitutional referendum. I believe in order for it to be successful, for it to actually get to the ballot and actually be voted on, it's going to require cooperation from the state government. There are so many procedural, regulatory hurdles that have to be overcome that if the government feels this is not a good idea or for whatever reason doesn't want to see it pass, there are numerous roadblocks that can take place. And as for homegrown, this is one component of several pieces of the proposed constitutional amendment that say we're going to allow this to be done in conjunction with laws that are passed by the legislature. Mm-hmm. But it's up to the legislature to provide the details.
Yeah.
So if the legislature stalls that process...
And we've seen this happen with other constitutional amendments, right?
And we have. Or if they severely restrict an element of, say, the homegrown provision, yes, you can grow one plant or something to that effect. Within the scope of this referendum, that would be permitted. And, of course, after the legislature does what it does, creating statutes, then the Department of Health and the Office of Medical Marijuana Use come in and promulgate regulations. It's a long, long process.
Yeah.
And as was just pointed out, if they don't get the signatures that are required by February 1st, which are 880,062, then this is all a mute conversation anyway.
Yeah. Let's go to Deborah in St. Pete. Deborah, you're on the air. Deborah, are you still with us?
This is Leela in St. Petersburg.
Oh, Leela, my apologies. Go for it.
Thank you. I just wanted to say first off that I love Dara's reporting. And I was wondering how much of the state's intervention in the marijuana amendment process appears to be legally grounded versus politically motivated under Governor DeSantis' administration.
Leela, thanks for the question. I appreciate that. What about that, Dara? I mean, you're kind of looking into the politics of it as well as kind of keeping tabs on the court case as well. What's happening there?
Well, I mean, there's no question that the governor and his administration were very hostile to the last proposal. They have not shown any signs of being any friendlier to this one. And the governor's former chief of staff is now the Attorney General of the state of Florida, James Uthmeier, and he has said that he does not think this should go on the ballot. The governor said that he thought the Florida Supreme Court erred when they allowed last year's to appear on the ballot. They have to review the ballot to make sure, the initiative to make sure that it meets constitutional muster. It is single subject and not confusing to voters. So the Attorney General is getting ready to send his thoughts about whether it should be on the ballot or not to the Florida Supreme Court. And he'll have some they'll be making some very strong arguments about why it should not. And that will be happening within the next couple of weeks. Is it a policy issue in terms of policy? The governor has been, he seems to have hardened to marijuana since he was first elected. I don't know if anyone remembers, but one of the first things he did after his election in 2018, when he took office in 2019, was he wanted the legislature to authorize smokable marijuana because he thought that should have been permitted under the constitutional amendment that allowed medical marijuana. So I would say it's part of both. It's political and it's a policy.
Yeah. We're talking about the bid to get another constitutional amendment to legalize recreational marijuana on the ballot in Florida. We want to hear from you as well. What do you think of this idea? Give us a call, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can send us an email to FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. And Derek Ham with the News Service of Florida and Richard Blau, attorney with Gray Robinson. Do stay with us if you can. We'll get back to this in just a moment on Florida Matters Live and Local.
Listener support powers WUSF. Funding also comes from Green & Green Attorneys at Law, whose team of divorce attorneys provide tailored guidance as needed for collaborative or traditional divorce. Green & Green, solution-oriented, trial-tested. Learn more at greenlegalfirm.com. The Tony Award-winning musical about the survival of the human spirit, Les Miserables, is at Straz Center in Tampa, December 10th through December 14th. Show details and tickets at strazcenter.org.
I'm Robin Young. The new, already acclaimed film Hamnet centers around Shakespeare's wife, played by Jessie Buckley, and her grief after their son dies. She's a fiercely emotive, dirt under her fingernails earth mother.
She's dirty. She's from nature, you know. She's human.
Jessie Buckley, next time, Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
On the Bay Blend podcast, we highlight things to do in the Tampa Bay area you might not even know about, like when I went to Rustic Steel Academy to try my talents at welding.
Do you think I have a future as a welder if I wanted to change career paths?
I think I would not quit your day job yet.
Well, at least he was honest. On the Bay Blend podcast, we give you the news and some fun in your own community. That's the Bay Blend from WUSF, wherever you listen to your podcasts or online at WUSF.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. We're talking about a proposed constitutional amendment to legalize recreational marijuana in Florida. Now, you may remember last year it didn't quite pass muster, got about 56% of the vote, didn't make the 60% threshold required to get a constitutional amendment passed, but supporters are having another go. What do you think about this idea? Would you vote for it if it gets on the ballot again next year? Give us a call, 813-755-6562. You can email us, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. And with us is Derek Ham with the News Service of Florida and Richard Blau, an attorney with Gray Robinson. Let's go to the phones. We've got Marilyn calling in. Marilyn, what are you thinking?
I was wondering, if a person has already signed the petition, how would you know if your signature is one of those that has been tossed out? And can you sign the petition again?
That's a great question, Marilyn. Thank you so much for asking. Richard, what about that? That's a little bit of a technical point there, but what should people do?
Sure. It's not clear that there's a way for an individual petition signer to find out if their particular petition was tossed out or not. I think the burden is put on the petitioner sponsor to examine which petitions have been tossed out. Do they feel they can get them re-signed and then move forward from there? It's interesting to note that in the Tampa Bay area, 147,623 petitions were collected. That encompasses Polk, Pasco, Pinellas, Hillsborough, Manatee, and Sarasota. That's almost, close to the 200,000 that were tossed. If the sponsor can go ahead and renew efforts to get additional signatures from the various counties that are necessary under the law to be represented, they might be smart to go ahead and start that process now, because while they want to appeal the court decision that struck those 200,000 petitions, that's going to be a potentially lengthy process.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of time.
Especially if it goes up to the appellate court, and if the appellate court decision is adverse, they may want to appeal it to the Florida Supreme Court. That takes a lot of time, and as you pointed out, they don't have a lot of time. February 1st is that deadline to have those petitions.
Yeah, it's fast approaching. Let's go back to the phones. Susan is calling in. Susan, you're on the air.
Hi, thanks for talking about this.
Sure.
I am not always in favor of our governor's policies, and in this case, I am on the same team with him. This, to me, is an example of, hey, if it doesn't succeed the first time, try and try again, because we've got the money to put it forth again. I think of it in practical terms on a couple of levels. Think of how many seniors we have in our great state who are driving, who will now be able to access marijuana. And more importantly, for those of us who have enjoyed a toke in our high school and college days, think of the difference between the medical marijuana and the grade of marijuana that is being grown today and the grade of marijuana you may have enjoyed when you were in high school or college. The marijuana these days is so expertly farmed and engineered that it is super powerful. And that is what will be available to people if this constitutional amendment passes. So I don't want people on the roads. I don't want the seniors being able to access this. And as an employer, I don't want my employees having to have an excuse to imbibe. So those are just my opinions. And lastly, follow the money and look at the unintended consequences if this passes.
Susan, thank you so much. Covering a lot of ground there. Appreciate your call. If you want to weigh in as well, the number is 813-755-6562. Talking about the potential for a constitutional amendment, proposed constitutional amendment to legalize recreational marijuana for adults to be back on the ballot next year. 813-755-6562 is the number. That's 813-755-6562. We are with Derek Ham with the News Service of Florida and Richard Blau, an attorney with Gray Robinson, who oversees the law firm's regulated products division. Dara, I mean, what about that sort of? I've heard that argument from a couple of folks about the strength of marijuana these days, and also some safety concerns, which was pushed pretty hard by the governor and other opponents of the amendment, the proposed amendment last time. What are you hearing this time around?
There's no question that the marijuana that you can purchase now at the from a medical marijuana dispensary, if you are a patient in the program, that the THC levels are much higher now from what we used to do back in the day. So that is just a fact. There also is there are products that are available over the counter at hemp shops that are quite high in THC, and that's a conversation for another day.
Sure, yeah.
But you don't have to, so we have these two products. One, you have to go through the program and to purchase those. You also can go to hemp shops or smoke shops and buy what can get you equally high, if not higher, without having to go through the program. Also, I do think it's interesting, the seniors do make up a growing part of the medical marijuana program. So already, if you have certain medical conditions, you can become eligible. You go through the program, you pay a certain amount of money to go to the doctor, you get approved by the Department of Health. And so seniors really are, I go to some of these doctors' offices and to some of the dispensaries, and I get a lot of their marketing materials. They are targeting seniors in the medical program. So this won't be a new thing for them to be driving around stoned, if you like.
Yeah.
The other issue about employers you can still say you can't be stoned at work. So this would not require employees to allow folks to be to come to work impaired.
Yeah. Richard.
Yeah, a couple of things on that point. Good news, but also some bad news. The good news to the caller's inquiry, the proposed amendment does have a provision that guarantees the right of a private property owner to say, not on my property. You can't smoke or vape cannabis. It also provides that the legislature, one of the responsibilities that was discussed about, work to be done if this passes, one of them is the ability to legislate what kind of potency level there's going to be a restriction on. How high can the potency for THC go? So there's that opportunity as well. Same for quantity. If the legislature chooses to do it and how they choose to do it, they can pass a statute that directs a cap or a ceiling on quantity, on potency. Downside is driving. That's a major concern for law enforcement and for social policy people because unlike alcohol, which over the course of decades, even generations, has now developed a system that's basically non-intrusive to very accurately detect the blood alcohol content
You mean the breathalyzer test?
Exactly. That doesn't exist for THC because of some chemical issues.
So it's got to be a blood test?
Well, there's an observation test for effects. There's a blood test There's a saliva test, but there's a lot of debate about how accurate those tests are. And there isn't the kind of specific breathalyzer type test because the molecules are a different size. THC operates in a different way in the human body from alcohol. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. Let's go to the phones
Also
again.
with the blood test.
Yeah, let me just get a call in here, and then I'll go back to you,
Sure.
Dara, if I could. We got Bert calling in Clearwater. Bert, what's on your mind?
I was just listening to this with great interest, but I was wondering if you all could just explain how a person goes about signing the petition. I was listening and I'm not aware of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go sign it, and I just wanted to find out how.
Bert, thank you for your question. That's a very good basic question. But before we get to that, Dara, you had some comment about the blood test and some of those other things.
I think, it's very problematic, even with what we have now, because there isn't like a roadside test. That's what Richard was saying, that you can do. And one of the problems with marijuana with THC is it stays in your system for much longer. So you could have consumed it a week or longer than 24 hours ago, and it will still show up in a blood test in your system or in a urine test, and that might not necessarily mean that you're under the influence of it. So that's one of the things that law enforcement struggles with.
Yeah.
In terms of where you can go to get a petition, you can go to Smart and Safe. That is the name of the committee that's behind the amendment.
Right, Smart and Safe Florida. And that's the same organization that was supporting it last time around, right?
Right. It's Smart and Safe, all spelled out, Florida.com. And I'm not being a proponent or an opponent of it. I'm just telling you that's where you can download the petition.
In the last kind of minute or so we have here, I wonder what both of you are kind of going to be watching out for the next month or so. Richard, you go first.
So the court proceedings that were mentioned previously, the one that's going to, at least at the circuit court level, strike 200,000 plus petitions that were expected to be used in the verification count, to see if Smart and Safe Florida pursues that appeal, and if they do, whether the District Court of Appeal will uphold the decision or reverse it. But equally important, I think, is what we discussed earlier, the notion that, hey, you still have 2 months, maybe 3 months to aggressively pursue additional petitions. That court challenge may not work out. So you really ought to be, if you're a proponent, you really ought to be pursuing more petitions.
Yeah. And Dara, what are you going to be watching for?
I'm going to be watching for those things that Richard just laid out, but also the Florida Supreme Court, because the Florida Supreme Court took a lot of heat from the governor for allowing this amendment to go onto the 2024 ballot. And I think we have a new attorney general. They'll be making different arguments this year as to why it shouldn't. And I think it'll be very interesting to see whether they allow it to go on or not.
We've been speaking with Dara Cam, reporter with the News Service of Florida, and Richard Blau, attorney who heads up regulated products at Gray Robinson. Thank you so much, both of you, for your insights. Really appreciate the conversation.
You're welcome.
It was a pleasure.
Well, tomorrow on Florida Matters Live and Local, Obamacare. Do you get your insurance through the federal marketplace? How much are your premiums going up, and what are your concerns? We'll join the conversation tomorrow on Florida Matters Live and Local at 12 noon. We'll see you there. Thanks for watching.
Travel 100 years back in time to see through the lens of one of the most iconic photographers of the American West. Edward S. Curtis, photographer of his time, now showing at the James Museum in downtown St. Pete. More info at thejamesmuseum.org.